With how the college football playoffs are set up, every single game matters in college football. So today I'm going over my top games for this upcoming college football season that may have impacts on the playoffs. Now, keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of other good games, but these are all games that I think are going to have impacts when it comes to deciding the four teams that make the college football playoffs. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First up, week one, we're starting off with a banger. We got LSU at Florida State. We saw this game last year, went into overtime, incredible game. We're seeing again this year two young, good teams that are on the rise. Two of those teams that haven't really been great as of late, but a lot of people are predicting that they make the step. I think one of these two teams has a real shot at playing in the college football playoffs. So this is a good game to determine, which one of these two is more legit than the other. Then moving on, week two, we got another classic that we saw last year. Not really a classic, but the old blood in Texas versus the new blood in Alabama. Texas at Alabama. That's Saturday, September 9th. Week two coming at you. We got Quinn Ewers and this young, feisty Texas team that I have a lot of hope in. There's a lot of really good talent on that team versus Nick Saban and good old Alabama. They're always going to be good. They got their new quarterback rolling in this year. They got a lot of new weapons on offense, hopefully taking a step up after a kind of down year last year, but still a lot of talent and an incredible defense, as you saw in the thumbnail with like Dallas Turner, Kool-Aid McKinstry, some of these dudes on the defense. So that's going to be an incredible game and a good game for Quinn Ewers' draft stock going up against a defense like that at Alabama. So that's a tough one. Next up, nothing in week three, but when we jump to week four, I got Florida State at Clemson, an ACC matchup of I think one of these two teams, whoever wins the ACC has a chance at making the playoffs. And so this is a big game. I know the winner of this game has a huge leg up on the other one. So Florida State at Clemson, great game. Week four, we got Ohio State at Notre Dame also. So week four is a pretty good week. Florida State, Clemson, and then Ohio State, Notre Dame. I'm not a huge Notre Dame fan, but I know a lot of people are this year. They think they're going to be really good. So hey, if you're going to be good, you got Ohio State week four, a team with an incredible defense and a team that should hopefully still be flying high on offense with two potential top 20 picks in the NFL draft. Just at receiver, none to mention two really good running backs and a quarterback that we'll have to see how he does. But Ohio State at Notre Dame, another really good test for Notre Dame and Ohio State. Neither Notre Dame gets plenty of tests. Ohio State doesn't really get many other tests other than Penn State and Michigan, so good test there. Moving on, we're jumping to week six. We got my only Big 12 matchup I have in this entire thing because I'm not as high on the Big 12 other than Texas, but Big 12 matchup in week six, Oklahoma at Texas. Those are the two teams I think are going to end the top in the Big 12 at the end of the season. They play week six, so there's a realistic possibility that the winner of this game goes on to win the Big 12, and then that team. I mean, if they have an undefeated season, they have to make the playoffs realistically. So that could be a playoff game, but definitely a Big 12 marker between Oklahoma and Texas. Next up, week seven. I mentioned Notre Dame's hard schedule. We got USC at Notre Dame. Good test for Caleb Williams against a solid Notre Dame team. In Notre Dame, if they beat Ohio State, it doesn't get much easier because you got USC coming in, and Notre Dame's going to have to win at least two of these. I have three games on here for Notre Dame. They got to win at least two of them if they want to make the playoffs. So another really big game, more for Notre Dame than USC because I think USC could lose this game, and if they still win out in the Pac 12, they could still make the playoffs. Whereas Notre Dame really needs this game. Next up, week eight, we got Tennessee at Alabama. This was one of the best games of the entire season last year. Tennessee hits the game winning walk off field goal to knock out Bryce Young in Alabama. They're returning this year in Alabama. Two new quarterbacks on both sides of the ball. A lot of people are still really high on Tennessee and Joe Milton. I'm personally not as high on Tennessee as others. But hey, if you're going to be good, Tennessee, this is a game you got to show it at Alabama in week eight. Continuing in week eight, we got Penn State at Ohio State. Now, this is going to be a good game because Penn State's going to be good, and I think Ohio State's going to be one of the best teams in the nation. But not only that, we got Marvin Harrison versus Kalen King. Kalen King, for me, is like corner two right now. Marvin Harrison and Emeka Buka, receivers one and two in this draft class. So, really good matchup at receiver versus corner in that Penn State Bama game. If you're a draft nerd, look out for that. Plus, obviously, Big Ten implications in that game. Week 10, moving on, we got LSU at Alabama. Another game where LSU, a lot of people really high on. Bama, a lot of people really high on. This is a big game in the SEC, whereas, if LSU handles business against Florida State, Bama handles business against Texas. These could be two undefeated teams coming at each other. And realistically, winner has a huge edge up in the SEC because of the fact that Georgia's probably going to go undefeated and make the SEC championship. The other team, LSU and Bama are going to be battling out for that other spot. Same thing, keeping it week 10. I found out week 10 is the best week of the season. Turn your Saturday, November 4th, clear your calendars because there is some good football. We start with LSU Bama. Then we got Washington at USC, a huge Pac 12 matchup, and two teams I think will be really good. You got Caleb Williams versus Michael Penix. You got incredible other dudes on either side like Roma Duns, Braylon Trice, Zion. On the USC, you got Mario Williams. You got tons of talent on both sides of the ball at USC versus Washington, and a game that could have huge impacts in the Pac-12. And if one of these Pac-12 teams wants to make the playoffs, they're going to have to win a lot of games, and they can't be losing a game like this. So that just shows how important Washington USC is. And then continuing in week 10, we got Notre Dame's third matchup. I said they have a tough schedule. Notre Dame at Clemson. A chance of two tough teams. Notre Dame could have two losses at this point, and this game doesn't mean much. There's a very good possibility, but there's also a possibility Notre Dame wins one of the USC or Ohio State games, and they're coming in here with only one loss, looking to have two top 10 wins on their resume. Really big game for Notre Dame and Clemson. Like I said, week 10, November 4th. Clear your schedules because those three games are all going to be incredible games with huge implications in the SEC, Pac-12, and ACC/Independent. Because if Clemson loses to Florida State and then they come back and also lose to Notre Dame, Clemson could be almost out of the ACC race and the playoff race at that point. So Clemson, a very big game for them too. Moving on, coming to the end of the season at week 11, we got USC at Oregon. Another game where if USC beats Washington and they're undefeated, Oregon's that next team to challenge them for the Pac-12. So I got that game Saturday, November 11th. Another huge Pac-12 implication game. Bo Nix versus Caleb Williams. If you're a draft guy, you're going to love watching those two go head-to-head. Everyone loves some good quarterback battles. So you got some good quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Shadur Sanders, and Cam Rising is going to be Cam Rising is just a really good college quarterback, and I could see him being a good kind of Gardner Minshew dude in the league. So you got a lot of good quarterback talent in the Pac-12, which didn't think I'd be saying after the last 5 years, but the Pac-12 has one last hoorah this year before the Pac-12 exodus happens next year, but it's going to be a fun year for the Pac-12. Moving on to week 12, we got a couple good games in week 12. We got Georgia at Tennessee. I have this on here because this is Georgia's only real test in my opinion. Georgia's going to cruise up through week 12, probably 11-0, 10-0, 12-0. I don't know exactly how many games they play, but they're going to be cruising up probably undefeated in this game. This is our true chance to see against a good team. I don't think Tennessee is going to be a top 5 team, but it's a good top 10 team in Tennessee. How does Georgia fare? This is our only chance to see this before the SEC championship, so I'm excited for that one. Then also week 12, if you're just care about college football and not the NFL, this game doesn't matter. But if you're an NFL draft nerd like me, North Carolina at Clemson is our chance to see Drake May against an elite defense in Clemson. Clemson has dudes all over that defense from Nate Wiggins, Makuba, Tyler Davis, their linebackers, Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter. This is one of the most talented defenses in the nation, like Clemson always is. Getting to see Drake May go up against that is going to be really good for his draft tape. And, it's going to be a really big determining game for him when we go back and look at Drake May when it comes to the draft. People are going to be turning on this Clemson game in week 12 and say, hey, he torched Clemson. He's got to be the number 2 overall pick. Or, hey, this dude struggled heavily against Clemson. Maybe we don't take that 2. Maybe you take Marvin Harrison, So it's going to be a really interesting game that everyone's going to turn to when we talk about Drake May come April for the draft. So that's one I had to put in there. And then my last game is arguably one of the best games every single year. Ohio State at Michigan probably determines who wins the Big Ten, probably determines which one of these two makes the playoffs. There's a chance both of them make the playoffs, but there's also a chance I had when I did my college football predictions. Go check that video out. I had the loser of this game comes 5. The winner is number 1. I had Ohio State winning this one, but realistically, whoever wins this game is probably undefeated and might get number 1 or number 2 depending on what happens with Georgia. But you're looking at a top 2 seed or potentially not making the playoffs, all hinging on just one game, Ohio State at Michigan. That's why I love college football, man. One game can be the difference between you making the playoffs and not, no matter if you win all the rest, which also kind of sucks with college football. but it's part of the fun. Anyways, these are not including. Obviously, we're going to have some good championship games. Big Ten obviously isn't going to be a great championship game. It'll probably be like Iowa versus one of these teams, which Iowa's going to have a really good defense. Don't get me wrong. But don't know if it's going to be what we would hope for. Whereas SEC, you could have like a Bama versus Georgia rematch in the SEC championship, which we would all love to see. ACC championship, potentially like a Florida State versus Clemson rematch, which would be great. And then Pac-12, we're going to get probably a rematch of USC, Oregon, Washington. Two of those three teams are probably going to be in that Pac-12 championship. So those are my top games. Like I said, there's other good games. These are all ones that I think are going to have huge implications on playoffs and championship winners. Let me know in the comments other games that you guys are keeping an eye on for this season. I'll see you guys for the next video. I got some more content coming for fantasy football and some players to watch for the college football season coming up. I'll see you guys next one. Thank you so much. Share, like, subscribe, do all that cute stuff, and I'll see you next time.